use 18,000 pounds as standard per axle for what our roads are designed for. So even though it was that heavy, it was only 18,000 pounds per axle.
Well, that's a monster. We should be doing oversized.
Right. So I said, well,
permits.
When I do the math, I come out with 36,000 pounds per axle, not 18,000. And she gets her
18 per wheel, maybe.
She gets her calculator out there, and she's like, oh, you're right. I'm going to do some more research on this. And she says, well, the guy that approved this no longer works for us.
Oh, isn't that nice?
And so I'm like, well, way to pass the buck.
Yeah.
You know, not, hey.
Someone should jump on it right now then.
Yeah, you know, but I'm like, way to pass it. She says, well, at least we're going to start. This has brought it to our attention. I said, well, there's a guy from CDOT who wants to come in and talk to us and explain to us the permitting process, and he does it at the
It should be permitted.
You know, and they did. They charged $55.
That's it?
That's it.
Oh.
Yes. Yeah. So more to follow on that.
$55. That won't even buy my wife Starbucks for the week.
But I found it, you know, well, he no longer works there. You know, way to pass the buck instead of taking ownership of what's going on in your
Not a good answer. Not a good answer. Yeah, that was a monster of a trailer.
1,296,000 pounds over 36 axles. On uncured.
Right?
Good evening, Mayor Ford, Mayor Pro Tem Teeter,
Here.
Councilman Madera,
Present.
Councilwoman Frank,
Present.
Councilman Diaz,
Here.
Councilman Douglas,
Present.
Councilman Huseman,
Present.
Councilwoman Elliott,
Present.
Councilman Guardiola.
Present.
Mr. Mayor, you have a quorum.
Thank you. For the record, everyone is here this evening. First item on the agenda is executive session. I'm open for a motion and a second to enter into two executive sessions pursuant to CRS 24-6-402, Parents 4, Parents B, for the purpose of receiving legal advice relative to ethics and public official liability laws, and CRS 24-6-402, Parents 4, Parents B, and E, for the purpose of receiving legal advice, developing strategies for negotiation, and instructing negotiators concerning noise issues arising out of the 1988 IGA with the City and County of Denver. Did you push? I need to know, are these buttons working? There we go. Mr. Teeter.
So moved.
Mr. Madera.
Second.
We have a motion and second. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say nay. Motion is carried. We're now in executive session.
got two of these now.
And one from the back?
No. Well, I guess it don't matter, does it? It just means I got two.
My head's spinning about a lot of different things right now, and I gotta focus. I get on a tangent about certain things.
Oh, I hear you.
How's that better? All right. A couple of things that I want you to think about during this moment of silence. It's been a busy weekend for me. I was in conferences all weekend, but it always surprises me when I have day after day after day of issues happening within the community that I think are tragic. Friday, we had, what do you call it, a gunman? Not a gunman, it was, what'd you call it? Barricaded. Yeah, well, he was barricaded. Guy with a gun shooting at our police officers with a shotgun. And it's terrible that this happens. I'm thankful that nobody in our police department was harmed. And I'm thankful that they were able to get the guy out of the house and in protective custody. So that kind of messes up a Friday afternoon when you have 4 hours of helicopters flying around, and it's close to home. It's a block from my house that we have this gunman and dealing with this issue. Saturday, a block from my home, we had a 14-year-old boy shot his 11-year-old brother and killed him. Another terrible situation that happened in our community. We also have to understand that that family and that 14-year-old boy are going to live the rest of their lives having to deal with this tragic event. And then was last night, I believe, Chief, we had another fatality at Chambers and 120th, a single-car accident, and the driver was thrown from the vehicle and killed. So to have a Friday, Saturday, and Sunday in our community like that are very disturbing. And normally when we get into the moment of silence, I talk about people in our community that we've lost. Tonight I want to talk about things that are very frustrating for me as an elected official to see happening in the community. I know drive-by shootings are up. And I was really frustrated when I talked to the chief to ask him, how many have we had? I grew up here. This isn't a place where a drive-by shooting is something that's normal. Again, I had one happen on my street, 2 houses down. And I was sad to hear the answer was 7 this year. Well, this was in February. That's 1 a week. That's a horrible thing to happen in the community that I grew up in. It's a horrible thing to have our residents dealing with. It's a horrible thing to have our police officers having to deal with on a daily basis. And so I guess I'm reaching out for people in that moment of silence to try to get to a better place in our community where we have less crime and more compassion for our neighbors. So please. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right. I'd ask the staff to pass around the microphone and allow the audience to introduce themselves.
Serena DeVivo.
Chris Kramer, Community Development.
Dominic Martinelli, Community Development.
Dennis Davenport. I'm a crime scene investigator for the police department and the president of ASME Local 1144.
Cheryl Hutchison, representative for ASME.
Tim Kaza, resident.
Denise Kaza, I work with Parks and Recreation, and I'm here on behalf of ASME Local 1144.
I'm Alan Trudell, and I work for the Public Works Department, engineering.
I'm Donald Austin from Suncor, Commerce City Refinery.
Cheryl Karstens, Finance.
Shalisa Hazlett, resident.
John Lucero with Public Works and ASME member.
Steve Skoronsky, Public Works, Streets Department.
By a council member, and I'll turn it over. I will turn it over to that council member here in just a second to have a way to potentially save the city some money. So I want to turn that portion of a council administrative business over to Mr. Huseman.
Mayor Ford.
If you will, please. Yes.
I apologize. I don't believe there was a vote on the motion that was on the floor to amend the agenda.
Oh, I'm sorry. I have a motion and a second. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say nay. Thank you. So with that, I will allow Mr. Huseman to talk about his recommendation. Mr. Huseman.
Thank you, Mayor Ford. My experience is very diverse, and from my military background to working in public works to facility maintenance to what I do now in asset management. I worked for a contractor who performed public works services for the city of Centennial. While there, I was very aware of I was a project manager, so I was aware of the level of service that we provided to that community. As a resident of Commerce City, before I ever considered running for city council, I always felt that the level of service that we got out of public works versus the level of service at other communities who have taken the time to privatize and find unorthodox or maybe outside the box ways to save money. I've always felt that our level of service didn't meet the level of service that those other communities provided. So I did some homework and calculated some costs, and I believe that there's a potential savings of anywhere between $500,000 to $1 million a year if we explore privatizing our public works, specifically our streets maintenance, not so much the engineering. What I would like to see is we as a community explore this as an option and determine if we can improve the level of service while at the same time reducing costs. I'm not asking for anybody at this time to lose their job. I'm not asking for anybody at this time to no longer be employed at the city. I'm just asking for the opportunity to explore these services and see whether or not we have the opportunity to save money while increasing level of services for our residents. There are roughly 56,000 residents out there that are expecting us to be good stewards of their tax dollars. And I think that it would be prudent for us to explore every way possible to minimize those tax dollars that are having to come in, at the same time provide them with the best service possible. So I move the City Council direct the City Manager to evaluate and present to the City Council options for contracting public works services.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
I have a motion and a second. I want to go to discussion. I normally go last, but I'm going to go first. As many of you know, growing up in this community, that's the department that I went to work for and worked for 10 years in the Public Works Department. Most of the people that I worked with are no longer there. There are a lot of new people, and I happen to know a lot of folks in every department just because I've been around for a while. I think it's important for me to let the employees of that department know that by no means are we sitting up here saying that we're going to privatize any department within the city. I think it's very important for me, and I've had a few weeks to think about Councilman Huseman's request. I always will want to save the tax dollars money. If there's a gap that an outside party could save $500,000 to $1 million with bringing in contract services, I'd like to know where that gap is so that we can do our best to fill that with the people that we have and to do it in-house rather than have to go outside. So I'm always going to be looking for how we can do things better. And if there's a way to improve those numbers, and still to this day, the council and staff haven't seen where those gaps may be. I'm looking forward to seeing where those gaps are and if there's a way for us to fill those gaps internally. And I'll tell you why, because this is a very near and dear issue. Number one, we're talking about taxpayers' dollars and making sure that we're getting the best service to our residents for the best price. Number two, we're talking about people. Several of you are sitting in the audience. These are people that live in our community, that are employed with the city and performing a job, and that money in turn goes back into the community. And I don't know enough about how privatization works, what that means for our employees, what it doesn't mean for our employees, but I'm glad you're all here tonight because I think it's important to dispel any rumors. I don't think this council at all is talking about a decision tonight or any time very soon about privatizing the department and you all losing your jobs. I don't think that's what we're talking about. I think what we're talking about is if Mr. Huseman has done some of his background and homework and found some inefficiencies, how can we fix those inefficiencies and do our job better and provide services better and save some money for our taxpayers? That's my goal. It's not about getting rid of employees. So here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to be supportive of Mr. Huseman working with our staff to bring those inefficiencies forward or where those gaps in services may be based on his analogy so that we can understand what those are. I will, however, not be supporting privatization in any way at this time. I will be supporting knowing what those numbers are, knowing where those gaps are, and if there's inefficiencies within any department within our city, I want to be the first to help fix those inefficiencies. But I also want to make sure that the employees of this community, regardless of department, know that I'm supportive of those who work for our community. So with that said, I'll move on. Mr. Madera.
I just wanted to add, because I know we have a lot invested in our public works in terms of capital, and I think it's upward of $17 million and just capital improvement and machinery. Not to mention, our people. We have a lot invested in training and a high level of service. I've had experience with our public works and their timely response to my request as a citizen. So, I just want to add that we do more of a long-term approach when looking at any type of privatization, because I don't want, something to say that we're saving $500,000 for the next 2 years and then it jumps significantly where we would have been better off with the investment that we had already made in our public works department and our people. So I'd also like to see a little more long-range type analysis and how that compares with our investment that we have in our public works right now.
Is there any other discussion?
Yeah.
There is. Mr. Douglas.
Yes, thank you. I appreciate employees being here and caring, especially the place where they work, and being the fact that we have collective bargaining, and you guys have done a great job as far as dealing with the city. Last couple of years, I've been trying to strengthen our employment, especially with the folks who have were in that gray area of not being a full-time employee, making sure those employees got health insurance, and then just as we're in a retreat we just went through, we talked about employer choice, and that being Commerce City being employer choice for our residents, and then strengthening that opportunity, and then also backing any employment opportunity as far as moving up to scale and in job security. So, I understand about trying to save money and all that. I'd say the difference between us and a lot of cities is our revenue, large portion of revenue is sales and use tax versus property tax. Now, like the county, they will, I'd say, outsource services based because a lot of revenue comes from property tax, and property tax could go up and down, so they have to stay at a certain level. I believe right now with the way we are with our debt services and money coming in, we're doing pretty good right now, but that doesn't mean things are going to go well, a couple years down the road. So, but like I said, I'm strong support as far as employees, and want to make sure that we're doing the right thing. If there's something that we can do on our end to make sure the environment is better for our employees, and so that they're more efficient. I think that would be our goal. So, thank you.
Mr. Guardiola.
excuse me, thank you guys for being here. I just kind of, if we're looking to save money, could we also look at other ways to do it, not just PW, but there's other things in the city that we can make efficient, so that way we're not just singling out PW. I think there's other ways we could save money and explore those ways too. If we could do that, I think I'm supportive of exploring also. I think exploring is just looking into the research, but I think we could explore other areas, other gaps, other ways we could save money if that's the goal.
Thank you. Mr. Diaz.
I think, I'm all about exploring, and I like the idea of looking into things, but I think what's given me the most heartburn regarding this is sometimes I feel like when you privatize things, you don't really have as much control over services that you would like to have as a city council or as a city. I know that this is different because it's a different agency or different entity, but for example, I know a lot of other municipalities have control of what happens with their water. We do not. And I would hate for us to look into privatization and have little control over what's happening with our public works, with what's happening with our services, street maintenance, all that stuff. I think, too, fresh out of our winter retreat, the other challenge that I'm having is for the last couple of years, I feel like we have kind of overburdened our staff with all these projects, capital projects, get more sit-down restaurants, all these things that we're looking at. And so while I do like the idea of exploring, I'd hate to put like one more thing for us to distract staff from the important work that we're doing. And I'm not going to sit here and spit over $500,000 to $1 million because that's big money. I completely get that. But I just feel like that's just not the best way for us to go right now, to privatize, lose our control over what's happening with that, coupled with the fact of all these directives that we have since given to our staff that I feel takes more precedence.
Thank you. All right, I see no one else. I'm going to reconfirm my position for both Councilman Huseman and for the audience. I am supportive of saving money for the city of Commerce City. I'm supportive of Mr. Huseman taking his information and sitting down with our staff and giving them the information to find inefficiencies in any department in this city. I will not be supporting only for one reason. Right now, I believe there's some morale issues primarily in Public Works. And I don't think I'm saying anything that most people don't know. I don't want to light a fire under those morale issues. I want those morale issues to get better. We went through the same kind of situation with our police department, Department of Justice, everything else to try to make it get better. Police department, I believe, has gotten better. I want the Public Works Department to get better as well. So the last thing I want is poor or low morale or decreasing morale because the City Council is having investigative efforts to find ways to save money, not necessarily talking about getting rid of employees. If we find those inefficiencies, I'd like to find a way to tackle them without privatization. So hopefully I'm being clear to all of you, and hopefully I'm being clear to Mr. Huseman that I want him to get that information to our staff, to give us information on where those inefficiencies are so we can try to fix them internally before we ever consider doing something external. So I will be voting no tonight, but I do want him to give those inefficiencies and the numbers he's come up with to staff so we can vet that information. I think it's important for us to represent all of the residents of this city. If we have a way to save money, I want to try to save that money as well. But I want to do it in the right way without turning the morale upside down that's already has issues within that department. All right. Seeing no one else, I have a motion and a second. All those, yes, sir?
You could certainly do a voice vote. I just wanted you to know you could also do a roll call vote if desired. So I believe the clerk has that prepared.
I do have a request to go roll call, so we'll go roll call. So if you can set it up there, Laura, we'll. All right. Perfect.
Your light should be flashing.
Thank you. Oh, I'm sorry. I hit the wrong one. Yeah, please. I know. Mine's in the wrong place. Yeah, it'd freak my public works employees out there if I voted yes. All right, there you go.
Are you ready?
Yeah, it's time to vote. Roll call vote, folks.
No, not roll call.
Roll call. That's roll call. Or, yeah, that's roll call right there. It's roll call vote.
Yeah.
That's what I want.
Yeah.
Hit your buttons. All right. All right. 2 in favor, 7 opposed. Motion fails to move it to a study session. But again, I'll reiterate, I am supportive of those inefficiencies being brought directly to our staff to make sure we can find ways to fill those inefficiencies. The reason I did this now is so that all of you folks can go home, because we do have a fairly lengthy meeting and some of our council members may have to leave. So I wanted to make sure you got to be represented by them all. Thank you all for being here tonight. Thank you. All right, now we're moving into citizen communication. I have several people that have signed up from Public Works. You're more than welcome to come up during citizen communication if you so desire when your name is called. Otherwise, you can wave it off, and when I call your name, we'll start with Dennis Davenport. And I want to remind everybody you have 3 minutes for citizen communication.
And Mr. Mayor, our timing button doesn't work, so we're going to use a phone tonight.
Great, thank you. Just let me know when the
And
time's
we'll
up.
give you a thumbs up, then 3 minutes is
Great,
over.
thank you. Mr.
Thank you.
Davenport.
Mr. Mayor and members of City Council, my name is Dennis Davenport. As I introduced myself in the introduction section, I am one of the crime scene investigators here at Commerce City. I'm also the president of our local for ASPE. And I'd like to thank the mayor for mentioning all of the activities that we happened this weekend with the police department. I actually worked on all those cases. Those were all very trying cases, especially the fatalities. And we keep those people in our hearts and minds at all times. Mr. Mayor and members of the City Council, I'd just like to talk to you a little bit about Public Works. And I understand the inefficiencies, and we all see some of those inefficiencies in Public Works and throughout the city. We all recognize those, and we all work to eliminate those inefficiencies as much as possible. We don't believe privatization is something that is going to help those inefficiencies. We believe the power of public service and public works is in the people, not in the cost. The people, the public works employees specifically, are those people that are the vested interest in making sure our streets are plowed, our streets are paved, the city is safe in that aspect, not privatization. It may work in some communities, not many, it would be our argument. I personally have witnessed and worked for a previous city where we had privatization. And one of my jobs at that time was to act as a liaison between the contractor and the city. And we had a lot of problems. Our levels of service decreased, and our costs increased significantly. And quite frankly, the contractor is interested in one thing and one thing only, the bottom line. These public service employees are not interested in the bottom line. They're interested in making sure you guys can make it to the city council meeting safely, that citizens can drive our roads safely, and do the work that is necessary to make this community a better place. Quality community for a lifetime. That's what these guys do. And I would ask you, I know you all understand that, I'd ask you to respect that. We're all interested in inefficiencies, and if you'd like to look at inefficiencies, I would also ask you that you talk to these guys. Not just to staff in general, not just to management, but talk to the guys on the ground. Because they're the guys driving the plow trucks. They're the guys that are fixing the potholes. They know where the inefficiencies are. They know what's going on. And we would like to be part of that correcting of any inefficiencies if there are them. So with that, I'd like to thank you for your time tonight. And if we're always available as a unit, as a local, to you as well as employees. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. All right, now I'm going to try not to mess this name up. Shalisa? I messed it up, didn't I? Okay, come on up. Please state your name and address for the record.
My name is Shalisa Hazlett. Shalisa Hazlett. SHALISAHAZELETT. You bet.
Good evening.
Okay. Thank you for all of your service that you do. I am here representing many Commerce City residents to ask you, the City Council, to legalize backyard chickens. Backyard chickens are defined as small flocks of hens, no roosters, intended for residential areas. Chickens are great pets. They're quiet and friendly. They are educational for kids, and they provide their owners with valuable eggs and fertilizer. Chickens also help control insects and are sustainable in a community like ours. Most cities in the Front Range allow backyard chickens, and it is time for Commerce City to do the same. When I sent a petition out to many Commerce City residents spanning south to north, it was met with very little resistance. In fact, the most common response was surprise. Chickens aren't allowed in Commerce City? Many residents would like to keep chickens, and those that did not were happily supportive of their neighbors having hens. The way our current ordinances read, we are asking you to remove chickens from the pets that are not allowed in our city, as well as remove the phrase "for production of food." We like the eggs. Any issues with animals at large, sound or odor, are already covered under our current ordinances. In Arvada, a local city who has had backyard chickens for some time, they've had minimal complaints and animal control issues regarding chickens over the years. If I haven't convinced you yet, and because many of us have talked to you already, I would like to address a couple of specific concerns: the HOAs and those who may disobey the law. First, HOAs. I have spoken with one of our HOA owners about legalizing backyard chickens. She voiced that the council's decision should not be affected by the HOAs. She said that most, if not all, Commerce City HOAs have rules in place already about no poultry and can reconsider on their own basis. That is the beauty of an HOA. Their rules should not govern the city's rules, but be in addition to them. Now, for those who may disobey the law, first of all, those who disobey the law should not be the governing factor in banning others from using something appropriately. Think of something that many of us use appropriately every day. Drive a car, maybe we run a business, or enjoy having dogs. Now imagine those things were banned. Is it right? Those were banned because of someone who disobeyed the law. Is that right to ban them? No. Would it be frustrating to those who would appropriately use those things? Yes. That is how many residents feel who would like to keep chickens in Commerce City, but also believe in sustaining the law. That is why we are petitioning you to allow backyard chickens. A flock of hens, no roosters, is quiet, peaceful, and can be a valuable tool. It is time to represent the desires of many Commerce City residents and legalize these wonderful pets. Thank you.
I want to thank you for coming in today. It's something that over the years we have dealt with, good and bad. And like you said, those who violate the law shouldn't, the ones who are honoring the law shouldn't be punished by those who are violating it. We get that. But the guy to my right deals with waking up to roosters on a regular basis. And it is a very, very trying thing for our public works and or not public works, but police department and code enforcement to enforce, because some neighborhoods there's chickens running all over the place, and so it's trying to find out whose they are. So I agree. In a perfect scenario, you could have a couple of hens, wouldn't bother anybody. However, there are areas where people are really tired of them roosting on their cars. So it has been a trying thing in Commerce City because of some of the people who violate the law. And we did do a survey not too long ago. Brian, how long ago was that? About a year ago? 2 or 3 years ago. Was that long ago? That survey was that the majority didn't want us to allow chickens. Not that it's not an issue that we can't take up again. When it comes to HOAs, yes, our city laws blanket the entire city. HOAs can have other things on top of, But if it's not allowed by city ordinance, it wouldn't be allowed anywhere. But it's something that we do have new people on our council. We're not the same council that heard it the last time. And I would allow any of the council members that want to bring up a discussion to talk about chickens to be able to do so. But at this time, we're sitting here as a body. I have to tell you, our ordinance is what it is. And the rest of the council heard your plea. And if someone wants to bring it up as a discussion item, we can study it again.
Okay.
Thank you very much for coming in.
Thank you.
Yeah, let me see. I still have one person here who wants to comment. Ma'am, if you'll come back up. I do have one council member that does want to comment. Mr. Teeter.
Again, thank you for coming in tonight with your concerns. I understand the younger generation has different values, and let me approach this a different way. I grew up in Commerce City. I grew up with the chickens and the pigs and the horses and the goats and the ducks, and I remember how Commerce City was at one time, and that is why this ordinance was put into place. Yes, I did have a rooster next door to me, and I let it go for quite a while before I finally got a hold of code enforcement and had that rooster removed, as well as the chickens in that yard. And as early as last week on 69th Avenue, I won't give the address, but I drove past a house where there was at least 15 hens running around and 2 or 3 roosters that were crowing. And I also turned that over to code enforcement also. So it's here. We got people breaking the law on it, and we're going to continue to crack down until we change it. Well, thank you.
Thanks again for coming in. All right. Cheryl. Good evening, and thanks for being here tonight. You just state your name and address for the record.
Good evening. My name is Cheryl Hutchison, and I'm with the American Federation of State, County, and Municipal Employees. Thank you for letting me talk tonight. I heard a lot from all of you about what should happen in public works. I've been working for a union and also worked in a school district where they did contract out, and it caused nothing but problems for us. They contract out our cleaning service. You have a contracted cleaning service. And in fact, there are some issues with that service. So please look at that. These people as a union have sat down with management, have sat down at the negotiation table, have even come and talked to commissioners to work to make Commerce City a better, cleaner, more viable place to live. A lot of these people live here. They spend their money here. They pay their taxes here. So when you look at whether you want to contract out to save, know that you could be hurting the same people that live here, vote for you, and pay their taxes. Look from the top down. I ask you to please do that. And that is from the department director down. Do you need to look at the whole city? Yes, you do. But also look at the turnover that's been happening in public works. Look at the last time that they bought new equipment. They have a lot of equipment. There's money there, and there's some new stuff. But they have some really old stuff, too, that if it was better equipment, even maybe if it was rented, it would save time and money. Look at the number of employees you have and the square footage and mileage you have in Commerce City. Do you have enough employees to do the job properly? If you had them on staff, in place, they're going to respond to your emergencies. They're going to be there when you need them for snow removal. They're going to be there to clean the highway when somebody dumps it. Who else is going to come out at midnight, 1 o'clock in the morning, 2 o'clock in the morning? Not all contract companies will do that, and that can cost you even more. So I ask that you look at the whole thing. These people work very, very hard for you. I know I sure don't want to get up at 1 o'clock in the morning and go do snow removal and also have to deal with the traffic because they won't back off and almost run into your snowplow. Look at the safety features these people have to go through for you. And I thank you for your vote tonight. I thank you for what you did. Know that there is nobody in this audience that wouldn't come and talk to you and work with you and try to make sure that things are in a better place. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. All right, another name, the way it's written, I'm going to struggle, but I'm going to try. Serena? Surrender? I'm struggling with this one. They're out there? Okay, she went to the bathroom. Then I'll call the next one, and we'll get back to her when she comes back in. Donald Austin, good to see you again tonight. Please state your name and address for the record.
Good evening. I'm Donald Austin. I'm the Vice President at Commerce City Refinery. Our address is 5801 Brighton Avenue, Brighton Boulevard, sorry.
Thank you.
Thank you for, well, first of all, I'd like to say thanks to the Mayor and the Council for listening to me tonight. There's a couple of things I'd like to pass on. The first is for information. Starting on Sunday, we will start to shut down one of the plants in the refinery. This is part of our normal maintenance, and we'll be going into what we call our integrity management system, looking out to check and inspect our equipment in Plant 2. That takes about 30 days, and it involves the work of about 1,000 contractors who work for 60 different companies. So here I just want to inform you of that work that's going on, and to make you aware that that's going to bring additional traffic around the refinery, and we look to control that, but just to make you aware of it. The other thing is, starting on Sunday with this work, there'll be some additional flaring as we make the plant safe. There'll be no risk to the people or the environment. It's something we do in a planned manner, and we do routinely to do this work, but just again to make you aware of that coming up. Just also to give you a feel for the work that goes on here. This we normally call our turnaround. This is our ability to open up our equipment, to inspect it, to check it, to make sure that it's fit for its duty as we continue to operate that plant. It's something we do every 2 to 3 years. So it was for information for you to know that. My second point tonight was to invite you and your council on the 23rd of March in the afternoon between 1 and 4 p.m. if you could come and join us. And I'd like to show you around the refinery. I'd like to show you the turnaround in progress. I'd like to show you some of the new additions we've made to the refinery in terms of wastewater treatment plant, and invite you in the spirit of educate and share with you what we're doing. So I hope that you can make that. I'd also like to make clear that this is not to have any public discussion or business in the refinery. It's for education. And as such, I believe will not be covered under the Sunshine Laws, but I would like to invite you along for that event, please.
We really appreciate you coming in tonight and giving us a heads up. So I know there's a lot of residents watching at home. If they live near or driving by the refinery, they may see some flares that are larger than normal. And it's through your turnaround process just to ensure that all the equipment's safe, and they shouldn't be worried about what's happening. It's normal
These are control processes.
Control process,
Yes.
right? Because in the past, I bring that up because we've seen where you've had some power outages and there's been some major flares because of having to bringing it back online because it was shut down immediately without because it ran no power. So I really appreciate you coming in, and I would encourage the city council members that are available to do that tour. I would imagine, Brian, that Lisa's getting that out on the calendars so that we can make sure that we have a presence to do the tour and understand Suncor and what they're doing. So appreciate it for you coming in tonight. Always great to see you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I got it, John.
Oh, Mr. Teeter.
Yes, well, thanks for showing up, boss. I know you got a big job ahead of you here. I'm just curious, where are you going to put all these new contractors with the Windsor Admin building now sitting on top where you used to put them?
Well, we have facilities built within and around the refinery to house them. We work around the clock, so although there may be 1,000 people, they will be split over that, and 1,000 is at its peak. We're starting to ramp up now. But most of these people will live in the community because they've come to the city to do that work. They'll be here for 30 days, but we are able to accommodate them, but it's not in terms of offices. It's more in a place to change, put them to work safely, and let them go home at night.
Great. I look forward to coming back out there and taking the tour again on the 23rd. I'll be out there to take your tour with you.
I'd love to show you around, and also love to show you our new water treatment plant that we just commissioned before Christmas. I think that's something you'd be real interested in.
Great, thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right, now, Serena? Is it Serena? What? I don't know, I probably messed that up. Come on up and tell us your name and address, please.
All right. I'm Serena DeVivo, and I'm actually from North Carolina, but I've been here for a month, and my dad's business is in Commerce City, and so I spend a lot of time at Pioneer Park, and I'm actually here to speak on 2 different subjects, and it's on Monaco Street, though, by the way. So the first one is addressing your first subject earlier, with the saving money. I had an idea. I follow different things about the environment, and in Sweden they're actually they're having to import trash because they've just started burning trash for renewable energy, and they have too much energy and they're having to import trash, and they've gotten rid of it all, and it's super cheap, no emissions.
It's going to cost us a lot of money to send our trash to Sweden.
Or maybe import some, so people just start throwing away more. But yeah, so that's just a suggestion. But for my second topic, actually, is about the skate park. I'm wanting to do a community mural for the remainder of time I'm here. So I've been asking all the kids, from little 2-year-olds to older kids like me, and about what kind of pictures, ideas, anything that they'd like to see. And I've gotten a lot of suggestions. It's all super innocent, and I think that it would be a great way to bring the community together, and make parents maybe feel safer, because if you people who vandalize and stuff, they're not going to vandalize on other art. They try to rebel against, authority, but if somebody's out there putting their own art, they're not going to trump over that, So I think that would be a way to keep that down. It brings everybody together, everybody likes to see something pretty and beautiful to look at, something exciting for the kids, because, it sparks their interest, and they're all passionate out there just trying to find their way, and I think it would be a very positive thing, a little touch of beauty to add. There's 2 different places that are already willing to donate. Habitat for Humanity for paint, and a small private place, and I'm still looking for more. I would like to start on it as soon as possible if you guys are willing to get on board. I have my dad's a licensed general contractor, so he could oversee it, and we do it at night and put up barriers and put on heaters and stuff. We'd have to do a little prep work, power wash it all, but we have all the equipment needed for that, and try to include as many people as possible, and I think it would be a cool thing. Be aesthetically pleasing to the eye.
Well, I'll start by saying, out of all the years I've been here, it's really odd to see a person your age come in with an idea at this level, identifying where to get product and things of that nature. So I got to give you some credit. You've only been here for a month or 2 from North Carolina, and already found out how to get the key to City Hall, which is pretty impressive in itself. So I will tell you, I think there's a process, and I want you to pursue that process. I don't think it's necessarily that the city council goes, yeah, sure, go ahead, go paint the skateboard. I think the way that it needs to happen is we have a cultural council. Okay. That cultural council helps to oversee art in our community. And so I would direct you to meet with the cultural council. There are 2 members of the cultural council here tonight at the dais. And they can, after I'm done, they can talk to you about when they meet, where to be, and how to address them. And through that process, I'm sure they're going to want to see a layout of what this would look like. So there's a vetting process that would have to be done. But I give you a lot of credit for coming in and just coming up with an idea and saying, I'm going to City Hall tonight and I'm going to make myself known. So I want to turn it over to one of the members of the Cultural Council and let that person explain to you how that process works, and then how you end up back in front of us or through the Cultural Council bringing a project forward to us, okay?
Okay.
So, Councilwoman Elliott.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you so much for your, first of all, your excitement. That's very refreshing. I would definitely, well, first of all, I need to ask, how long are you planning to be in Colorado, Commerce City, for that matter?
I believe like at least another week or two, maybe a month.
So you want this done like now? Okay, well, because I was going to plan to invite you, myself and my colleague, Councilman Guardiola, sit on Cultural Council, and our meetings are on the second Tuesday of the month. But this is something that would be of definite interest to our council. I've sat on the council now for a little over 6 years. I just want to find out with the approach or how you broadcasted your idea. You said there was a lot of people that were actually interested in participating, and so do you envision this as like maybe a one-day event or 2-day event? Or, I mean, how big of a mural? What are we looking at?
I would have. Okay, so I was gonna do like the basically the whole bowl, or try to fill at least half of it.
Okay.
And I wanted to see, because I wanted to do it like later at night, so it wouldn't like disrupt anybody who could drive. So I wanted to see if like the older kids would want to get together and do that, and then have like the little kids during the day or something touch it up and like add whatever they add whatever they want. But I asked them. I was just sitting there, and I can't wait a couple of days, and I keep asking them, and it's basically like animals and nature, like a whole like the whole 4 seasons changing on the head of the bowl.
Sure.
So they can look up at it and stuff.
No, I think that's wonderful. I realize your timeline is fairly short, but I would invite that you maybe leave your information, that we would at least just reach out to you and actually extend the invitation to the others that may be interested as well. So, but thank you so much.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Brian?
If this young lady would walk out with Michelle Halstead, we'll get her contact information so we can talk through some alternatives.
They are. Thank you for coming in, and thanks for your energy. All right, that concludes the list that I have for citizen communication. However, I always ask, is there anybody who got here, didn't have the chance to sign up, or by listening to everybody else already has something they want to bring up? Now's the time to raise your hand so that you can have the opportunity to speak to the council during citizen communication. Gentleman back here, come on up. Need to state your name and address for the record. Yes, sir.
If I might make a quick announcement. I understand from Michelle Halstead we're having issues with our Channel 8 broadcast. It's not here locally. The issue is with Comcast. The council meeting is being broadcast live online. Okay. We are taping the meeting so we can rebroadcast it on Channel 8. We're working to correct the problem as soon as possible.
Great. Thank you. And my apologies to all those watching at home.
Hello. My name is John Lucero, one of the Public Works workers. I guess my question to the council would be that when you guys investigate this issue with what's going on, that we look at technology, what it's taking, the cost of technology to labor cost. Because the problem today in our world today with Public Works is we're doing more technology work than labor. So I hope there's going to be a full investigation of checking everything before we go to privatizing Public Works.
Well, John, I'm glad you stepped up. I think it's important for all the Public Works Department employees to know that this isn't something that the council's not going to be down there talking to the supervisors and stuff. It's just inappropriate at the position that we hold, and we just got out of our training for our ethics training with CIRSA. We have to have the administrative side of the city look into where inefficiencies may be, and come up with best practices on how to fix some of those inefficiencies. Because Mr. Huseman was in that industry, I think he brings something to the table to be able to say, here's some ways that maybe we can do things better. That needs to be passed on through the city manager and vetted and really find out where any inefficiencies may be. And I will also tell you, I don't think it should be limited to only public works. I think we should look for inefficiencies anywhere in the city, because we want to save the taxpayers' dollars and we want to make sure that we get the best service for the best money and that we treat our employees fairly. So there's a process that has to be done, and normally we're not allowed, because of the way structure of our charter and everything else, we're not allowed to interact and go down and ask you. You know, I just don't show up down at Public Works and say, hey, John, go out and fix that sign for me. I have to go through a process to get that information to make sure. So we want to make sure that process is being followed. And I'm sure that anything that happens administratively, that direction is going to be to look at inefficiencies, and that work will be done through the city manager's office, not through the mayor's office. Okay? So I can assure you that in the department and within the city, that's how that process has to work. I'm just asking Mr. Huseman to bring any of his findings forward to be able to help us to refine the process, to be able to make sure we're giving the residents what they deserve for what they're spending. So I appreciate you coming in tonight.
Okay, thank you.
All right, thank you. Is there anyone else before I move on? All right, seeing no one, we're going to move on into the rest of our agenda. We start with the consent agenda. The consent agenda includes items that are routine, procedural, informational, self-explanatory, non-controversial. They are presented to council for a single motion and vote. Any member of council may ask to remove a specific item off of the consent agenda for further discussion and a separate vote. Tonight there are 4 items listed under the consent agenda. Does anyone on council wish to remove an item off of the consent agenda for further discussion? Anyone? Seeing no one, I am open for a motion. Mr. Madera.
Move to approve the consent agenda.
Thank you. Mr. Teeter.
Second.
I have a motion and a second to approve the consent agenda. Will the attorney please read the titles of the consent agenda?
Resolution 2018-11, resolution approving the use of off-highway vehicles by the Commerce City Police Department. Resolution 2018-13, resolution approving grant of easement to South Adams County Water and Sanitation District. Resolution 2018-15, resolution authorizing amendment of municipal judge agreement and appointment. Resolution 2018-17, resolution appointing members to designated boards and commissions of Commerce City.
Thank you. I have a motion and a second. Titles have all been read. I'll ask for a roll call vote. For the record, the consent agenda is approved unanimously by council. Now we move into public hearings. We have Resolution 2018-09 and Ordinance Z 898-18. The next 2 items will be heard under one presentation but voted on separately. Because this is a newly seated council's first public hearing, I will remind the City Council to use the hearing to ask questions, but wait until the hearing is closed to express opinions or indicate how they will vote. All right, I'm going to open the public hearing, and I'm going to invite the staff forward to give a presentation. Good evening. It's not just Channel 8, is it?
I know we were having some issues with the projector earlier because of the high winds. It's actually shifting the projector around a bit. So Dominic's just going to cycle through the slides in this mode as opposed to the full screen mode.
All right.
Thank you, Council. My apologies for the technical delay. We'll just go ahead and use this format. But anyways, I wanted to introduce myself to the council members that I have not had the opportunity to present to before. My name is Dominic Martinelli, and I am one of our city planners, and you all will see a lot of me presenting land use cases to you in the future. So the cases that we have tonight are cases S652-18 and Z-898-18. A request to rezone the subject properties from I-2 and R1 to PUD, and a subdivision to create legal and conforming lots. The applicants are Jesse Aragon and Rolf Nance, and I will be doing the presentation tonight. So just a brief introduction to different types of cases for those city council members who have not had the opportunity to review these types of cases before. So these three topics are what we're going to be going over tonight. A zone change is the act of changing the zoning of a particular property from one district to another, which can affect what types of land uses are legally allowed on that property. A subdivision is the act of dividing, consolidating, or reconfiguring property boundaries and updating legal descriptions. Subdivisions may also include the dedication of public right-of-way. A PUD is an acronym for Planned Unit Development, which is a special type of zone district that establishes entitlements for a property that are customized to and specific for different types of land uses. So it may have similarities to other zone districts or be completely unique depending on the land use. The way that I typically like to think of PUD zoning is sort of a la carte. There's certain components that may comply with a normal zone district, but there's certain aspects that may be different depending on the specific type of use. So the subject property is located at 86th Avenue and Willow Street. So you can see them highlighted. It's currently a configuration of a number of different parcels. There's approximately 4 at the moment. The two properties to the left are at 8470 East 86th Avenue, where the mouse cursor is. To the right is the property that's currently zoned R1. There's a number of different parcels that are in odd configurations and consolidations. The Irondale neighborhood has had some historic platting issues, so this is reflected in a lot of older properties that have not been rezoned or dealt with recently. It's in the primarily industrial corridor. It's right next to Highway 2, but is within proximity to a number of agricultural properties and more intense industrial. So it's really a mixed bag in this area. The future land use designation for these properties are a mix of general industrial and light intensity industrial. So these pictures here are current site conditions of the property. So in the upper left-hand corner is East 86th Avenue alignment looking east. And the upper right-hand corner is East 86th Avenue looking west. The property fronts along 86th Avenue and then goes south. The photo in the bottom left is the main site entrance where you can see the main building on the property. And then additional photos we provided is what the site currently looks like from Highway 2. You can see that the BNSF railway is slightly elevated and provides some screening for the property. Tract A is an easement that goes to the south portion of the property and serves Mr. Rolf Nance's property. And then JBS Pipeline is the property directly to the north. It has some similar industrial type uses. And then Aerial Equipment Specialists is to the west. So the prior history of this property is it was annexed and zoned I-2 and R1 since 1981. Industrial operations have been occurring on the site since the early 1980s. And the property owner recently acquired the property in 2007. And an application to rezone the R1 property to I-2 was heard by the Planning Commission in 2012. Planning Commission voted 5-0 to recommend approval to City Council for this specific case in 2012. And the case was continued after Planning Commission and was withdrawn before reaching public hearing at City Council. Since this time, the applicant has submitted the PUD and subdivision plat. So the applicant is requesting a zone change for the subject properties at 8470 and 8510 from I2 and R1 to allow industrial uses. This specific request will allow a wide variety of industrial uses, both I1 and I2, plus salvage operations, outdoor storage unrelated to the primary business on the site, which are currently active uses. Typical I2 uses such as tow truck operations and general construction material storage are uses on the site as well. The applicant is also requesting a subdivision plat in concurrence with this to consolidate parcels and remove a number of significant platting issues that occurred previously. Just to give a little bit of background on how the platting issues occurred previously, the Irondale plat was the original subdivision done for the area. That was done in 1889, basically with the intent of developing residential properties surrounding the original Stoveworks factory, which is the, if you see in this little exhibit we have here, the main central point, which was intended to be the main employment center for Irondale. So the original Irondale plat consists of 25-foot wide lots with access easements. Little development occurred in this area until the 1970s, with agricultural land mostly being converted into industrial. Due to the age of the document, and as these properties were platted over time, there were errors in terms of getting accurate legal descriptions. There's been issues with platting. There's been disputes over property lines. So legal subdivisions and a number of different things, including lack of public improvements, which have really contributed to a lot of difficulty in understanding the specific boundaries of certain properties. So in concurrence with this, this is the proposed site plan for the PUD permit, which is being processed administratively along with the subdivision and zoning cases. The general configuration and layout for their site is a 35-foot access easement that will go through both properties to provide adequate fire access and circulation throughout the site. There will be general fenced-off storage yards that will contain adequate storage and fencing, and there will be movable storage sheds, which will meet the floor area ratio requirement, which essentially is a requirement in our code that building properties have to have a certain percentage of their lot size dedicated to building, and that for industrial properties is typically 5%. So the sheds will be serving that purpose, as well as providing areas for electrical hookups and other services as well. Towards the south, Track B will be reserved for drainage and detention to take care of some of the drainage issues that are occurring on the property. And then Track A will be providing access to Lot 3, which is owned separately by Ralph Nance. In addition to this, we've also provided a copy of the landscape plan. One of the issues that was brought up at Planning Commission was a request to provide additional screening of the site from Highway 2. So I wanted to bring to the attention of the City Council landscaping that was placed along Tract A here, which is intended to be primarily evergreen landscaping materials that will screen the property throughout the year. So you can see here is another figure showing the current parcel configuration. There's currently a small narrow strip which was originally intended to provide access to the property to the south, and then certain portions of the property to the left are configured in an odd way, and there's currently parcels that do not front public right-of-way, which is a requirement in the Land Development Code. And this is a copy of the subdivision that is proposing to be going along with this proposal. The 35-foot access easement is memorialized on the plat, as well as showing significant cleanup of the platting, as well as providing a drainage tract to be Tract B, and then the access easement to Lot 3. So East 86th Avenue is currently blocked off with Jersey barriers. It's not currently complete right-of-way, just east of the property entrance, preventing full access to Willow Street. As part of this subdivision, 30 feet of right-of-way will be dedicated on 8510 East 86th Avenue, which is the property to the east. This will be for fire access and to create through access to Willow. Upon approval, the road would be graded after the right-of-way is dedicated. So one of the major intents with this application as well is to improve the East 86th Avenue frontage and to get full access and dedication along that route. So the Planning Commission's analysis was the approval of the subdivision would clean up significant platting issues, allow for 30 feet of right-of-way dedication, and help drainage in the area. Rezoning the property would create a conforming use that was in existence prior to the adoption of the 2009 Land Development Code. The land use on the subject property is not substantially unique compared to other properties in the general vicinity. The PUD is specifically prohibiting certain intense I3 uses such as refineries or metal manufacturing because the infrastructure in the area is not in place to handle such uses and their potential traffic impacts and other externalities. While the Planning Commission recognizes that there are uses of this proposal that are generally not associated with an I2 zone district, based on the location near the railroad, making a non-conforming property conforming, and addressing platting issues and drainage issues in the area, the Planning Commission believes the proposed rezoning and subdivision will provide a net positive outcome. The subdivision approval criteria is established within the Land Development Code. So essentially, this is more of an explanation for the council members that have not had to review these cases before. But typically, there are certain criteria that the planning staff and the DRT will use in making their determinations and recommendations, which we pass on to City Council. And we have certain guidelines that we follow within subdivisions and zone changes and all the different types of cases that are reviewed. So the 4 bullet points below show what the subdivision approval criteria is: that it's consistent with the proposed land use documents, the plat's consistent and implements intent of the zone district, it will not result in a substantial or undue effect on adjacent properties, and the plat would comply with all applicable city standards. And then these are these approval criteria that would be used for the zone change: is that the change is compatible with the proposed development and surrounding industrial land uses. The zone change is consistent with any city-adopted plans which identify these properties as industrial. And with the opening of 86th Avenue, connectivity and emergency services can be provided more adequately and easily. As of March 5th, staff has received no request for additional information. On February 6th, 2018, the Planning Commission voted 5-0 to recommend approval with one condition to City Council regarding these cases. The condition states when the site improvements are to be completed by. We will be making a small revision to the recommended motion because it references a specific PUD permit. And since the applicant has had to revise their development plan to show the new landscaping, there will be a small modification stating that it's referencing a new PUD permit. The Planning Commission also requested additional landscaping, and that's where this has come from. So staff is available to answer any questions that you might have. The applicant is also here tonight to speak on this behalf as well.
Thank you. Does the council any of the council members have any questions for our staff at this time? Mr. Guardiola.
Yeah. I had one question. Does this align with the Irondale project, or does it have any conflict with any of the proposed plans with the Irondale moving forward?
As of this moment in time, there's not a definitive answer on that. We're currently working through the Irondale plan now. We had our second outreach meeting recently, but we've had some feedback from the consultants that we've been working at that have shown a couple different land use scenarios. Generally, from what I've seen, this specific area that this property is located, the recommendations that our consultants have made based on the impact and feedback from the community is for this to remain more in the general industrial type, which this use would fall into. But I cannot provide a complete answer to that until we get through the process and see how it finally ends up going.
All right, seeing no others, I'd invite the applicant and or representatives forward to add anything that our staff did not add.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, members of council. My name is David Foster, 360 South Garfield, here tonight on behalf of the applicant. The Aragons are here, and Mr. Nance is here as well. Bill Logan, our engineer, is here to the extent that any of them can help to answer questions. Let me begin by thanking your staff. Start at the top with Mr. McBroom and Chris Kramer and Steve Timms and Dominic, who kind of joined this project more recently, Paul Workman, your city attorneys. Several of them aren't with the city any longer who have been working on this project for a number of years, Public Works. There are a number of issues involved with this rezoning and subdivision that I'll go through in just a moment, but it really did take every single one of those departments their effort in getting us to today. And so I just wanted to make sure that you knew how hard they had worked and how long they've been working on this. So the city council had this on its agenda back in 2013 and 2014. Some of you might remember that. When we went through the Planning Commission just last month, several of the planning commissioners had heard this case and voted on this case once before. When it was in front of the Planning Commission and then sent to the City Council back in 2013, the city actually was the applicant, and the city was seeking to rezone the R1 portion of the site. And Dominic, do you mind just putting up that one map that shows the that gap? Yeah, that's good. So half of the site was zoned R1 and half of the site is zoned I2. And frankly, you know, and Dominic went through a little explanation of some of the difficulties that some of the properties in Irondale have suffered through over a number of years. This is really no different. Not really sure why. When the property was zoned and annexed back in, you think 1980, I think 1978, right there we have a conflict in terms of when it actually came into the city. But what's not in conflict is since 1987, it's been used as you see it today. And so for over 30 years, the property has been operating as the outdoor facility, as you guys have probably noticed. And so what the city was trying to do is it was trying to clean up its zoning map and rezone the R1 portion and make it an I2. The problem with that was a couple-fold. The first is the rezoning really needed to be accompanied by the subdivision that you have tonight for a couple of reasons. The first is that gap, that long, what I'll call a flagpole, isn't owned by my clients, the Aragons. It's actually owned by Mr. Nance, and it is his access point down to his property on the south side. And without a proper subdivision, what we would be doing is we would literally be crossing over another person's property every time that the site was going to be accessed. So clearly this site needed to be subdivided appropriately. And with the new subdivision, the access is being taken along the eastern portion, what we have identified as Tract A. So we've cleaned up a number of just site development issues with the plat. And then the PUD allowed us to really accommodate the uses that are existing today to make them conforming, as Dominic had mentioned. And so for those of you who are reviewing a land use case for your first time, welcome to the land use world. This has been a very complicated case because it took us a long time to kind of understand all of the kind of the nuances of this particular site. But the PUD that is being proposed tonight does allow for the uses on site to be conforming. And so at long last, we're in front of you, and it is now an application being brought by the different property owners and not by the city. What you're also getting as a result of this, there's nothing hugely exciting about this particular project, so I don't want you to think I'm going to open up some curtain and all of a sudden something fantastic is going to come out from behind. There's nothing hugely exciting, but there are some things that are happening as a result of the rezoning and the platting. The first is there will be the right-of-way dedication along 86th. That was an issue of some contention because we had discussed over the years, we're not doing anything new on the site. We're not changing the use of the site. Generally, if you change the use of your site, if you're going to somehow rezone and redevelop your site, that would enable the city to seek a right-of-way dedication. That wasn't what we were planning to do. We were planning to just use the site as we've historically used it. Nonetheless, the 86th Avenue right-of-way is being dedicated via the plat. The site was initially designed to have a rather significant drainage facility along the western side. That also presented some complications. One of the complications was the drainage facility, A, was never built, and B, was approved across two different properties. So half of the drainage facility was proposed to be built on a property that wasn't even owned by the folks who owned the property before my clients did. So what we're doing in this plan is we're moving the drainage for the site. We're actually going to build it, and it's going to be on Track B. And so it will actually function the way it's supposed to, and will improve to the extent that there is water that is coming off of the site today, that will be contained on site. And so that Track B that you have on your subdivision plat will be built. The entire site will be regraded and to accommodate for that detention facility. The owners will also be purchasing additional storage facilities in order to accommodate the FAR requirements that Dominic had mentioned as well. There is, as Dominic mentioned, some additional landscaping along Highway 2. That was the issue that the Planning Commission had identified. Sure, the railroad creates a decent buffer, but there was a gap there, and so we'll be accommodating their request by including trees along that frontage. And the internal improvements that are going to be built using recycled asphalt in order to ensure that there is less dust when people are accessing the site and using the facilities. There will be a pretty significant capital investment on the part of our clients, and so that is kind of in a nutshell what happens as a result of the rezoning and the subdivision plat. I'm happy to answer any other questions that you might have, and again, have appreciated the time and energy that your staff has put into the project to get us here today.
Thank you. All right, any questions for the applicant and his representative, Mr. Teeter?
Yes, thank you for coming forward with the staff and trying to develop this area down there. I was down there over the weekend looking it over, and staff and you people have your hands full. I can see that. I was surprised to see there was some nice homes back in there too, and I think that asphalt will be a great benefit to them as far as the dust control back in there. It looks to me like it's a start for us to maybe start in that corner down there and move forward from there. I'm glad somebody's starting to take control of that down there. Thank you.
Yep.
Mr. Douglas.
Thank you, Mr. Foster. I do remember this case here, and I did visit it as well, and I see there's just a lot of different little lots and movable sheds, so you can move them around. What exactly is going to be on the property as far as each one of these little slotted areas?
So the site is designed in such a way to accommodate tenants who will use those lots for their own outdoor storage facilities. So there'll be a storage shed on each of those lots.
All right. It's not for residential.
No, that would not work very well.
All right.
All right, no other questions for the applicant at this time? Thank you.
Great.
I do have a question before we move on to our staff. After hearing some of the comments about dust and asphalt and different things, I think it's appropriate with 86th Avenue being widened and allowing that to be a through street. I know that there will be an increase in traffic. And in the past, I have had a lot of complaints about dust in that area. Primarily has to do with city maintenance of the dirt road. With having that widened and graded and open to Willow and additional traffic, how do we have a plan on how we're going to be able to, with the increase in traffic, and I'm talking about the right-of-way section, not the recycled asphalt on the property. Do we have a plan on how we're going to maintain that gravel road so that we don't have the same kind of increase and more dust for the existing businesses in the area?
Well, certainly the ultimate solution is significant improvements in that entire neighborhood. That's the purpose of the Irondale neighborhood study. But as you can probably already guess, those improvements will come with a fairly significant price tag. The challenge in the meantime is dedicating enough resources to make a reasonable attempt at controlling dust. I don't know offhand what Public Works has budgeted this year, for example, for dust control, but we can collect that information and get it back to council.
All right, my only concern is I will hold my comments as to my position on the public hearing before us, but I do have a concern that as we open up 86th Avenue, we do have a responsibility to the other businesses that have had problems with dust in the past, increasing that traffic, that we also have an obligation to increase our efforts on reducing and maintaining that gravel road surface to reduce the dust. Otherwise, the complaints that I was getting will magnify 100-fold. So I'm saying this not for the applicant, I'm saying this for our staff to make sure that we're cognizant of opening that road, that we have to make sure that we provide the resources to maintain it properly so that we don't negatively affect other businesses in the area because of the gravel road not getting proper maintenance. Hopefully I made myself clear. Mr. Douglas.
Awesome before.
Okay, thank you. All right. Now, is there anyone in the audience who would like to testify to the case before the City Council at this time?
I'd like to make a comment.
You're more than welcome. Come on up, state your name and address for the record.
Michael Aragon, 2602 South Linden Court, Denver, Colorado. One of the things that I think is important to know here on this project, I've done about a dozen of these throughout the city and Colorado Springs, and I'm extremely good at it. And what you see today and what you've seen in the past is not what we do. We've inherited that. The use is what it is, and we're using the use as it's been for years. It is what we do as a business. That's the type of use we need, but not in that manner. This was, I don't want to say, but it's a bastardized way of using property. And we used it. We're dealing with everything that David Foster talked about. But what we're going to have when we're done, you guys are going to really, really like it. It's going to be comforting. It's going to be aesthetically pleasing to the neighborhood. And we're going to put about $400,000 in that property. It's going to have a very, very nice look to it. And all the yards are going to have the fencing. It's going to be clean. And when I do what I want to do to that property, let me tell you what happens. Of the tenants I have today, maybe 10% of them could occupy the new one. because the cost of doing business just went up. We get a better, cleaner, more concerning tenant that wants to do business at a higher level, because we've got to charge more now to afford our investment and to move forward. But you'll really love it. It'll look beautiful. I guarantee it. That's all I want to say. Thank you.
All right. As the applicant, does anybody have any questions for Mr. Aragon? Seeing none. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
All right. Again, anyone in the audience that would like to address the council on this development?
Yeah, I'm the one right across the street there, JBS
State-
Pipeline. I'm Jim Parent here.
State your address real quick, Jim.
8600 Verbena, right across the street there. My only concern is with 86th Avenue. You know, you mentioned the dust, and I appreciate that. But what about, you know, the landscaping and then the fencing going along the property so you're seeing into a salvage yard is what they're kind of asking for. You know, and what about the curb and gutter and the asphalt and the things that are supposed to be happening? I know Mr. McBroom was talking about the future plan. You're talking about 10 years down the road here, you know. We eat dust every day as it is, and now you're going to open up the road so cars can go faster through there, and it needs to be fixed. And when we rezoned 8600 Verbena, we signed an agreement say that we would pay to have half the road asphalted, that we would pay to have half the road developed with curb, gutter, asphalt, and street lights and you know, landscaping and everything else. And I'm just wondering what's going to happen with the other half of the road now, because all I'm hearing is grading and more dust.
I'm glad that you came forward. I brought those concerns up because I know that you have called me several times about the dust situation. I do know that the city is going through a process of identifying what to do with all of Irondale. And you're right, that's a longer term solution. We're talking about how do we manage 86th Avenue in the short term so that you're not eating dust all the time. I think if that right-of-way is opened up, it is going to increase the need for improvements as we go along. I want to get to your concern about asphalting or public improvements that are required as part of the subdivision and or as part of this process. I know you did yours, and there were some public improvements required. Are there any public improvements required with this process for the other side of the road?
So I can go ahead and provide a little bit of clarification to that. In terms of the process for how we review these from a planning perspective and the role that Public Works plays, typically once we receive an initial request, the staff will refer the case out to the various review parties, and at that time the Public Works Department would determine whether a public improvements agreement would be required and what public improvements would have to go along with this case. And at the time that this was referred out, there was no requirement specifically for the construction of curb and gutter or paving for the other half of the road. So that was the direction that was provided from the Public Works Department regarding this case. In terms of opening up East 86th Avenue to full traffic, that was mostly for the requirements of fire access and safety.
Thank you for clarifying, but it does bring up another question. If Mr. Parent went through this process several years ago and had a requirement for public improvements on half the road, and we don't require it on the other half of the road, I'm not saying that we shouldn't. I'm not saying that we shouldn't require it on the other half of the road, but if we don't require it on the other half of the road, then we shouldn't require it on Mr. Parent either. As part of the Irondale plan, if we're going to go in there with a plan, I would feel that we're doing a disservice to one or the other if we make one property here, one property there, put towards public improvements, and we don't make others put toward public improvements. And so I do have a concern about the process. So if we don't include public improvements as part of the process for this property, then I think we need to take a serious look at relinquishing the requirement of public improvements across the street for the people who voluntarily came in and gave up the access and right-of-way as well. I want to make sure that we're being fair to all property owners, especially on the same road. So hopefully, I stated that to be very, very clear. I'm not trying to say the applicant before us today should be required to do public improvements, but if that's the case, then I got a concern that Mr. Parent was required to do public improvements. So you can't have it both ways. Either nobody has to do those public improvements and we wait until we have an Irondale plan and we vet it out and determine if we're going to do a special improvement district or how we're going to put those public improvements into Irondale, or everybody has to participate in public improvements, and then you drive the cost way up for that. But I want to make sure, and we're having two businesses in the room tonight, that we're not treating one differently than the other. So we either need to help fix some of the properties like Mr. Parent, who voluntarily helped the city on giving up the right-of-ways and relinquish his requirement for public improvements, to be fair. But I want to make sure that we're treating everybody the same way in our community. So I don't know how we get to that, but it's brought up in this public hearing, and I'd like to see if we can get some kind of an answer through the city manager or the city attorney.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Parent.
I'm sorry, sir. I need your name and address again. I didn't
Jim
catch it.
Parent.
And Parent?
Yep. 8600 Robina.
86. Thank you, sir.
Yep.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you for coming in. Robert, do you have an answer? Or Brian?
What I would suggest is if the application before you tonight is approved with no requirement for improvements on their half of the road, it seems reasonable to revisit the requirements under which Mr. Parent was required, or that requirement was included in his agreement at the time he rezoned. I don't recall all the facts and circumstances surrounding Mr. Parent's application, but it seems reasonable to revisit that.
Yeah, and I'm glad you said that, because with Mr. Parent being in the room, it was very encouraging for him to voluntarily give up that right away and move his fence back and do all the things they needed to do. And I know it cost him a lot of money, and that's still when we were requiring industrial uses to have to put money into the parks fee. And I distinctly remember Mr. Parent coming to me and going, hey, you know what, I voluntarily moved forward to help the community, and now I'm slammed with $50,000 in parks fee, and it's harming me, and I didn't think this was going to go down this road, and now I have a bigger cost than I thought I was going to have. And to have him sit in the room tonight and hear that the guy across the street doesn't have to participate in public improvements, why do I think we have an obligation to make sure that we reach back out to Mr. Parent after tonight and try to make sure that whatever happens tonight, that we show the same compassion to people in that area, that they're treated the same, so that one doesn't have more of an obligation for public improvements than another for voluntarily stepping forward and trying to improve the city's area. And so hopefully, I'll leave it at that. Depending on how tonight goes, I'd like to make sure that staff reaches out to Mr. Parent and JBS Pipeline and make sure that we come to a solution to rectify it to where they're treated as fairly as the applicant is before us this evening.
Just one final clarification. I do think it's reasonable, if this particular application is approved without a requirement for paving on the south side, that we revisit the facts and circumstances surrounding Mr. Parent's application, but I wouldn't want that to be construed as obligating the city in any way to change any of the requirements under which Mr. Parent's application was approved.
Yeah, I'm trying to make sure we treat everybody the same. That's my goal. All right, is there anyone else that has any comments or concerns in the audience to speak towards this case tonight? Seeing none, I'm going to close the public hearing. And I'm open for a motion and a second to accept the findings and recommendations of the Planning Commission on case S-652-18. Mr. Teeter.
I'll make a motion to approve.
We've got
I'll
a
second.
motion for approval. Second, Councilwoman Frank. All right. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed, say nay. Motion is carried. Now I'm open for a motion and a second for approval of Resolution 2018-09. Mr. Teeter.
Make a motion to approve.
Thank you. Mr. Huseman. Second. I have a motion and a second to approve the resolution. Will the city attorney please read the titles?
Resolution 2018-09, resolution approving subdivision plat in case number S-65218, resolution 2018-09.
Thank you.
One moment, please.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you. Go ahead.
There's a voice vote on this one. It's a resolution.
Oh, I'm sorry.
That's all right, no problem. I have a motion and a second. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say nay.
Nay.
I have one nay,
Got it.
8 ayes, and usually it's you, Laura, that's correcting me. So I finally got one back at you, just so you know.
Mayor Ford, on the next two motions.
Yes, sir.
Relating to the zoning case, each motion of approval would involve changing the date of the development plan that was recommended as a conditional of approval to February 14th, 2018, because that development plan was updated to include the amended landscaping requirements. Is that accurate? So that would be within the motion, given the update.
Thank you. Now I'm open for a motion and a second to introduce ordinance Z-898-18
Mayor Ford, sorry.
as amended.
We would be doing the findings and recommendations first.
No, that's not the way this is set up, but okay. You want the findings and recommendations of the Planning Commission?
Yes, on case Z-89818 with the change of the development
You got me all
plan.
screwed up now,
I apologize.
because I got nothing like that in here.
Oh, that's the update?
That's part of the second sheet.
He doesn't. So,
I think it's on the second sheet.
Yeah, but we're not at that point. No, we're not there. We're still.
Mayor Ford,
we're
I think
on Z-898-18.
there was an updated script, I believe, prepared that you may not have a copy of. So if you would like me to read that portion, that motion that's up next.
So we need I just need the
Sure.
case number.
Sure.
We need a motion and a second to approve the Planning Commission recommendations on case, what is it?
Z-89818 with the change of the development plan to February 14th, 2018.
As amended by the attorney. Mr. Teeter.
Make that a motion.
Okay, Mr. Diaz.
Second the motion.
I have a motion and a second. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say nay. Motion is carried. Now, we need to take up the introduction of ordinance Z-898-18 by council as seated. I'm open for a motion. Mr. Diaz.
Move to introduce ordinance Z-898-18 by council as seated.
And this is the tricky part because it's written in the draft ordinance. With your consent, that the section 5A would change the date to February 14th of 2018.
I suppose we could do that.
Thank you.
To change the date to February 14th, 2018.
Thank you. Apologies for the interruption.
Motion as amended. Is there a second?
Second.
All right, hold on a second. I got Mr. Douglas first on the second.
Second.
So I have a motion and a second. Will you read the title, please?
Ordinance Z-89818, an ordinance amending the zoning ordinance and zoning map of the City of Commerce City, Colorado for rezoning to PUD Zone District and approving a PUD Zone document for the properties described in Exhibit A, attached hereto and made a part hereof, located at 8470 and 8510 East 86th Avenue, Commerce City, Colorado.
Thank you. I'll ask for a roll call vote. For the record, motion is carried. It's introduced. 8 in favor, 1 opposed. All right. Thank you all for being here tonight. Moving on to ordinance 2156. Thank you.
Thank you.
Ordinance 2156 on first reading. Does council desire a presentation from the city attorney on this ordinance? I'm asking.
No.
Nobody? Okay. All right. Is there anyone in the audience who would like to come forward and address the council on the matter of ordinance 2156? Seeing no one, I'm open for a motion and a second to introduce the ordinance by council as seated. Mr. Teeter.
Okay, on ordinance 2156, I'd like to make a motion to approve that as council is seated.
Thank you. I need a second. Someone's flashing. There we go. Mr. Guardiola.
Second.
I have a motion and a second to introduce ordinance 2156. As council is seated, will the city attorney please read the title?
Ordinance 2156, an ordinance amending Article 10 of Chapter 20 of the Commerce City Revised Municipal Code to impose a voter-approved excise tax on the wholesale transfer of marijuana and marijuana products to support public safety and modifying the definitions and administrative provisions contained therein.
Thank you. I'll ask for a roll call vote.
He stepped out.
Mr.
Okay.
Hughesman
Mr.
is.
Hughesman went to the restroom.
Yeah, he's taking a break.
Okay. Do you want me to continue or?
Yes, continue.
Okay.
All right. For the record, ordinance 2156 is introduced by council this evening. 8 in favor, 1 abstain. All right. Next, ordinance 2157. This ordinance is reapproving an ordinance approved last year due to an error in the publication of the ordinance after approval on first reading. Does anyone on council have any questions regarding this ordinance? Anyone? No? Okay, is there anyone in the audience who would like to come forward to address the council on this matter? Seeing no one, I'm open for a motion and a second to introduce ordinance 2157 by council as seated. Mr. Douglas.
Yes. I'd like to make a motion to introduce ordinance 2157 by council as seated.
Thank you. Is there a second? Mr. Teeter.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Will the city attorney please read the title?
Ordinance 2157, an ordinance reenacting and ratifying Ordinance 2134, amending the 2017 budget of the City of Commerce City, Colorado by appropriating a portion of the unencumbered fund balance of the general fund in the amount of $471,197 and transferring a portion of the unencumbered fund balance in the general fund to the CIPP fund in the amount of $305,561, transferring $42,310 from the Information Technology Fund to the CIPP Fund and appropriating a portion of the unencumbered fund balance in the NIGID Fund in the amount of $68,565, the Fleet Fund in the amount of $47,517, Urban Renewal Authority Fund in the amount of $102,248, and the Police Donation Fund in the amount of $45,622 for a total amount of $1,083,020 and authorizing the expenditure thereof.
Thank you. I have a motion and a second. I'll ask for a roll call vote. For the record, ordinance 2157 is introduced unanimously on first reading by City Council. Next item is ordinance 2162. Does anyone on City Council have any questions regarding this ordinance? Seeing none. Is there anyone in the audience who would like to come forward and address the council on this matter? Seeing none, I'm open for a motion and a second to introduce ordinance 2162 by council as seated. Mr. Teeter?
Make a motion to introduce ordinance 2162 by council as seated.
Thank you.
On first reading.
Mr. Diaz?
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Will the attorney please read the title?
Ordinance 2162, an ordinance creating Section 11-2104 of the Commerce City Traffic Code regarding persons remaining in medians.
Thank you. I'll ask for a roll call vote. For the record, ordinance 2162 is introduced unanimously by the City Council this evening. Next, we have ordinance AN-245-17A. This is another ordinance which is reapproving an ordinance approved last year due to an error in the publication of the ordinance after approval on first reading. Is there anyone on council who has any questions regarding the ordinance? Saying none. Is there anyone in the audience who would like to come forward and address the council on this matter? Seeing none. I'm open for a motion and a second to introduce ordinance AN-245-17A by council as seated.
I motion to introduce ordinance AN 245-17A by council as seated and approve the ordinance on first reading.
Thank you. Is there a second? Mr. Madera.
Second.
A motion and a second. City Attorney, please read the title.
Ordinance AN 24517A, an ordinance reenacting and ratifying Ordinance AN 24517, approving the annexation of contiguous unincorporated territory described in Exhibit A attached hereto and made a part hereof, generally located north of East 104th Avenue and west of Chambers Road, Commerce City, Colorado.
Thank you. I'll ask for a roll call vote. For the record, ordinance AN 245-17A is passed unanimously by the City Council this evening. I need to stop and take a pause just for a second because I notice some people's lights aren't lighting up for me to be able to react to. So I want to make sure you get called on. Sometimes I see a blink, but I'm not seeing a name come up. So make sure you push it hard enough. I want to make sure you're called upon so that you just don't have to speak out. So let me know if your light's not working so that I can. And the other thing I want to mention is I know that a lot of times we wait to see who else is going to kick their light on, but it's very important that I mention that when I need a motion one way or the other to consider what's before us, if I don't get that motion, then it never happened and we move on in the agenda. So it's important that that somebody make a motion one way or the other for us to consider what's before us. And sometimes I struggle. You'll see me pause and wait. I'm just waiting for somebody to kick their light on. If that light comes on, I'm going to call on you, okay? All right, moving on. Ordinance Z. 781-02-04-06-10-17-18-A. This is another ordinance reapproving an ordinance approved last year due to an error in the publication of the ordinance after approval on first reading. Is there anyone on council that has any questions regarding the ordinance? Seeing none, is there anyone in the audience that has any questions regarding the ordinance? Seeing none, I'm open for motion. Mr. Teeter.
I'd like to introduce ordinance, that's going to be a long one, isn't it? Z-781-02-04-05-06-10-17-18. Council is seated on first reading.
Thank you. Councilwoman Elliott.
Second the motion.
I have a motion and a second. Will the city attorney please read that title?
Ordinance Z7810204056, 1017-18A, and an ordinance reenacting and ratifying ordinance Z7810204506, 1017, approving the Reunion PUD Zone Document Amendment Number 4.
Thank you. Title's been read. I have a motion and a second. I'll ask for the roll call vote. That ordinance has been introduced unanimously by the City Council this evening. Now we'll move to administrative council business. Does anyone on council have any council business? Mr. Diaz?
Yes, I wanted to make a request to see if there's any other council members who would like to take my place on the senior commission and join Councilman Teeter on that. When I first sought appointment to the senior commission, it was with the idea that that was on the second Thursdays of every month. And then the 27J Capital Facility Fee Foundation would be on the second Wednesdays of every month. Since I started serving on those, I found out that the Capital Facility Fee Foundation for 27J actually meets on the second Thursday of every month, so it does conflict with the Senior Commission. And due to the fact that I was just named the chair for the 27J Capital Facility Fee Foundation, something tells me I need to be at those meetings. So I just wanted to bring it to council to see if anyone was interested and available to sit on the Senior Commission.
Thank you. Did we have any alternates on that committee?
He was the alternate.
You were the alternate. So it wasn't a regular position?
It said 2 members, right? Or was it?
Yeah, if it was an alternate position, we can do without an alternate unless somebody has a.
That was a 2-member.
It was.
It was 2-member.
Oh, so it was a regular member.
Right. 2 regular members.
There's 2 regular senior commission members from the city council, and they meet the second Thursday from 3 to 5 in the afternoon.
Do we have any alternates that
So
signed
2
up?
regular members, no alternates.
No alternates. So we do need another regular member, second Thursday of the month. Is there anyone with interest to serve on that senior commission?
We will send a reminder email out to everybody. So give it some thought, and if somebody would like to take Mr. Diaz's seat, just let us know, and we can get it on a future agenda.
Yeah, look at your calendar, see if it's something that you can do. 1 meeting a month, 12 meetings a year. What time?
3 to 5.
3 o'clock in the afternoon, and I think that's probably what is killing most people because of work schedules. So if we can't get another member, someone might talk to the commission and see if they can adjust the time a little bit to make it more flexible to gain another member from the council. Thank you. Mr. Douglas.
Yes. I just had a request. I know last year we talked about, it was brought up to look in at our new facility for the rec center to open up a half hour earlier and a half hour later. And we have yet heard any feedback from that. So if maybe by next council regular meeting we could have an answer on that, I'd appreciate that. Just, the cost, and because I know with the new rec center, we're trying to, I know staff's working hard trying to get it open at a spring date. I know it's probably going to be done in stages, which is great. But if you could comment on that, I would appreciate that.
It did. The issue was raised at the budget retreat last August, prior to Mr. Bullock raising it this past fall. In August, the discussion of council at the time was to consider the idea of changing the hours once we get the Bison Ridge Rec Center open and have some experience with operating that facility and staffing that facility. We would still prefer to perhaps revisit that issue this fall after we get the facility open and have some idea of, again, how the staffing and operation of that new facility is going.
Okay. Thank you.
Councilwoman Frank.
So I know that we have the Leadership Academy and we have like a police type academy, but I would like to see if I can get the support of other council members to possibly expand on those and have like a Commerce City University that would maybe be, like a 9-week program for citizens to go through to learn about all aspects of Commerce City, including, public works and our finance and economic development, and, really kind of have people go through that course, because it would, we would have more people in the community with a better understanding of how things work in Commerce City. And again, it would be engaging residents. And so I'm just wanting to see if we can get more information on that and if council would be in support of that.
I would say I'm always supportive of making sure people know the inside of our community, how it operates. And I did go through a leadership academy with the Metro North Chamber of Commerce that was regional in nature. And I know we have a local program for a leadership academy. The one that I did with the Metro North was college accredited. I don't believe the one that we have, our leadership academy, is or not. I would like to try to expand on that leadership academy and make sure that we help to inform the residents when it takes place, what days, and make sure that we do our best to encourage people to sign up for it. But I don't oppose what you're saying. I'd like to try to expand on the existing programs that we have, if that's a possibility. Anybody else have any suggestions? Mr. Douglas?
I would just say to expand on Councilwoman Frank's ask, because I brought this up before, like doing a boot camp. I think basic information for people to have throughout the year and make it consistent. I understand about the academy, but if we had like a boot camp to let everybody know what's going on with their city services and the do's and don'ts with the HOAs, we got to bring them in as well, not just the city services, because people are so confused on how things work. So I would like to see something like that, but maybe do a boot camp so it's continuing education, not something tied to the Commerce City, because that's done in the daytime. We need something that can be done in the evening. We have more people to participate. So I would like to see if we can do a study session on that to form some sort of boot camp. So going forward, people are aware of our actions and what they can and cannot do in our city.
All right. Anybody else? I don't have any problem setting up a program. I think that the two of you ought to work with Michelle and the administrative staff to try to put together some outline for what you're talking about, what it would entail, and then maybe we can have a broader discussion at a study session. Is that okay with both of you?
Yeah.
Okay. Anybody else? All right. Any other administrative council business?
If I might add just one additional comment to that, the Adams 14 Education Foundation takes the lead in organizing the Leadership Commerce City program, but the city is a big investor in that program. The Adams 14 Education Foundation has asked us to consider increasing our financial support of that program, so there might be a nice opportunity then to increase the curriculum, if you will, of that program in exchange for additional support from the city. So in light of the comments tonight and previous comments from Councilwoman Frank, we'll explore that to see if that might be a way to address what it sounds like you might be seeking.
Maybe in the near future, we can get Councilwoman Frank and Mr. Douglas and Mr. Dale Mingleton together for a meeting, maybe something that Michelle can help put together and correlate and then bring back whatever those findings are to the council in a study session situation. How's that? All right. Any other administrative council business? I do have one item I want to bring up just because it kind of surprised me tonight, and I want to, I don't know if staff would like to have council support, but I am really curious to the process of who has to do public improvements and who doesn't in land cases. And so that was pretty surprising to me. And I didn't want to get too deep into it during the public hearing, but I do think it is something of concern. In the past, we used to have some properties that were in areas where there were lack of improvements. One of them I recall being the Worth Manor when it was constructed. They were forced to put in curb, gutter, sidewalk, and everything else on an unimproved roadway with Rosemary Street. So you have all of Rosemary Street, and then you have just a little short piece of curb, gutter, and sidewalk. And that was always frustrating to me because we required at the time that they built the Worth Manor to make public improvements to an unimproved road. And part of my concern is when you do that, you block drainage and everything else with placing sidewalks in the middle of the road. So I've always pushed and opted to that we do a letter of intent that at which time public improvements are necessary, that they will participate with those improvements. To see that we have now properties that have the opportunity to get them to buy into public improvements, and we're not pushing for those public improvements, and having people in the room that have paid or signed up to have to participate with public improvements across the street, especially when it's the gentleman that's concerned about lack of maintenance of the right-of-way. I want to have council support me in directing the staff to reach out to Mr. Parent to try to rectify this discrepancy, because if we don't, it's going to bite me and probably others in the rear end, because it is not like it's not fair, and that's just the way I see it. So I'm asking for support of the council to ask for the staff to look into this and contact Mr. Parent and come up with some type of reasonable way to make this fair concerning public improvements at 86th and Verbania.
Is that a motion?
It is a motion.
Second.
We have a motion, a second. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed, say nay. Give some direction to staff to come back and follow up with us with the ongoings of how that turns out. That in the past, over all the years, those are the things that have really been hard to deal with. So, and I would just say to our planning department, consistency. If one has to do it, we need them all to do it. If they all don't have to do it, then none of them should have to do it. I know we're going through an Irondale process right now, and we need to try to figure out how we're going to make improvements to an area where we have hardly anybody that is on the hook for public improvements. But to have one or two people on the hook for public improvements and everybody else get a free ride, that's really frustrating. And I think the only way we try to sort that out, in my opinion, after doing business in the past on fixing up areas in the community, is looking at ways, districts and other options. But to have one and not the others is if I was the one paying the bill and the other guy across the street didn't have to, I would have significant problems with how the process works. I'm going to let it go there, and I'm going to let the staff do a little work and come back to see how we can make things fair.
I'm sorry, may I get who was the second on that?
Mr. Douglas.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Now, no more administrative council business. We'll move on. Reports. Mr. McBroom.
We did distribute via email earlier this afternoon this week's edition of the City Manager Update. No City Council action item updates, just a couple of reports, the legislative report and the work schedule. So, as always, reach out if you have any questions.
Thank you. Mr. Attorney.
I have no additional report this evening.
All right, I'll get into mine after I'm done. Any council member that has anything to add is more than welcome to. So I had Rotary, myself, Mr. McBroom, and Mayor Pro Tem Teeter met with the EPA Regional Director ACED Executive Committee meeting, ACC meeting, Rotary, ACC meeting again, Rotary again. We all participated, well, most of us participated with the telephone town hall. Mr. Teeter was not able to participate because he was at Dr. Cog. Had a meeting, myself and Mr. Teeter and Councilwoman Elliott with Catholic Charities. Had the City Council Winter Retreat. I want to thank, again, on the record, I want to thank all the staff that put everything together and brought together a good retreat. I also want to thank the retreat committee for helping to line up the process in which we would get the information in a timely manner. Another ACC meeting, and as you can tell, ACC, Airport Coordinating Committees, consuming a lot of my time. And the regular meetings, Councilman Teeter also, or Mayor Pro Tem Teeter also attends. Had the Adams County G4P County hearing, which Mr. Teeter attended, to talk about infrastructure and putting together priorities. Correct, Mr. Teeter? I'll let you expand on that.
Yes, this is a new process with Dr. Cog, and this is the time of year when we submit projects to Dr. Cog to hopefully to be funded. This year they're expanding a brand new program, so this is the first time for us. This is one of 3 different settings we're going to have to determine what Adams County is going to be able to submit to Dr. Cog for hopefully for money down the road. And we did push for 270, 56th and Vasquez, 60th and 85 or Vasquez. We did put something in there for 88th between I-76 and Highway 2, and we even put something in there for a northbound lane from 74th Avenue onto I-76. So this will be a process that's going to have to go through. Like I said, we're still going to commit 2 more times that we have to meet with the Adams County projects. These projects, they seem to be. Oh, also I forgot the one with 120th and 85, the flyover there. So that's one of the main projects too. And that looks like, from listening to everybody else put their 2 cents in that meeting, that could be a very good chance of getting that funded. So, like I said, fingers crossed. We still have to go through 2 more processes.
And just for the council's information, that actually goes on to and constructs the priority list for Dr. Cog. Unfortunately, in the past, every time they did a priority list and we had a project on it, it always got pushed back. So we haven't seen much for funding from Dr. Cog through the priorities. And hopefully with the new process, we'll have it vetted better, and our projects won't drop off that list. Mr. Teeter?
Yeah, if I may expand on that, Mayor. Last year, Adams County ended up with a whole $2 million. This year, we are hoping to receive $280 million. We're going to fight over here for Adams County.
Huge difference from what we've had in the past. So hopefully, stay on top of them down there, Rick, and hopefully we'll start seeing some of our projects get to the end of the priority list and get actually completed. All right. Commerce City Business Appreciation Awards Breakfast. Again, a big shout out to our Economic Development Department and to all the businesses that were there represented that received recognition. It's pretty amazing, some of the businesses that have been there. The one been over 100 years. Pretty impressive to see some of those businesses still active in our city and some of the businesses that are actually expanding and doing more. So always great. There were several council members there. And then this weekend, because I'm going to be the president of Commerce City Rotary starting July 1st, I had to go through a president-elect training seminars. It was 3 days over the weekend, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. So I'm glad to have that behind me, and now can look forward to being able, now that they taught me how to run a meeting, I'll be able to run the meetings at the Rotary Club. So that was interesting that I literally had 3 days of how to run a meeting. So I'm glad I got a brush up. And thank you to Robert and to Tammy Tenoy for putting together our training today. And again, I'd like to reiterate how important it is. If you have any doubts about anything, please reach out to the attorney. I want to give you one situation that just happened to me that may very well happen to some of you. I had a lady with a land case issue on Olive Street, and she was very frustrated. She contacted me and Mr. Teeter by email. Both of us pushed those emails forward to the right people, Mr. McBroom, to have staff deal with that. And I received another email about how we were not doing our job, and that she felt that the press needed to be involved, and there was a whole lot of other things that she said that wasn't so nice. So I reached out to her, and I explained to her that by contacting me and that I had already had everything in the process through planning to be looked into, that she could be causing me to lose my ability to vote by taking information that could come forward in a public hearing outside of the context of that hearing could compromise my vote. And so it's something as mild and meaningless as what that may sound. So a person that needs some direction and is frustrated, and you try to, push it to the right people to handle it the right way, and sometimes you get caught up with the fact, and you need to reiterate to them, I cannot talk to you about this land use because I could be compromising my ability to vote if I take testimony outside of that hearing. And I did just that, and I told her, and I would, if this ever came before us in a land use case, that I would disclose the fact that she wouldn't let me off the hook without talking to her and the fact that I heard testimony that wouldn't be part of that case. So be very, very careful. And I did have to immediately talk to Brian and Robert about that and bring that to their attention. But sometimes you just get that phone call, and you have to be very, very prudent about making sure you let them know up front that you can't hear certain things. And so it's not if it'll happen, it's when. It happens all the time to me, and you just have to get used to the fact that your best friend is the administrative staff, and to make sure that you are directing people to the right place and not listening for too long before you apply the fact that you can't take that information. So if you have any questions or concerns on anything coming up, please reach out to the administrative staff and the attorney. Now, I have one person that has lit their light up, Mr. Guardiola.
Yeah, with the Youth Commission, just to give you a little recap, we met on Thursday. They are planning a Commerce City Youth Conference for October. So just wanted you guys to give you a heads up. They will be asking to see what our budget is. Staff sent us an email of the budget. So this is a big thing. They are organizing it. Myself and Nicole are just guiding them with Daniela from staff. So just keep that in mind. It's October 24th, I believe, Nicole. It's a Wednesday. We're working with the Parks and Recs and golf. It'll be at our new rec center. They have 3 sessions right now with about 2 motivational speakers. They're going to cap it off at 100 students. And they're doing it all. They're recruiting their students from all of our high schools that we have students from. So just to give you a heads up, if you guys could put that on your calendar. We don't know what involvement council will have yet. We're kind of letting them lead, and we're just sitting back and kind of guiding them. But it's October 24th. It'll be the first annual Commerce City Youth Commission conference. It starts at 8 to 3:30.
Thank you, guys. I appreciate that, and always encouraged when we get the youth involved in government. All right, is there no further business to come before the City Council of Commerce City this evening? We are adjourned. Now we'll move on to the